Welcome to the C-Suite. This is our final episode before ILTACon in Nashville in 2 weeks from this recording. And I'd like to start off by congratulating one of our panelists on his new role, Jim. Congratulations on making a big move.
Thank you very much, Stacey. I'm excited to share that I am now the Chief Information Officer of Foley and Lardner. It's an outstanding firm, and I thank everybody at Fenwick and West. It also is an outstanding firm.
Sounds like there's nothing but good to go around. That's awesome. So, in this episode, we are talking about future proofing. So, I imagine we'll be able to leverage some of this transition experience that you're having. We're talking about future proofing, which is, of course, really all about AI these days. And whether firms are actively investing in AI or resisting AI altogether, they're making strategic choices. And every firm is kind of approaching it a little bit differently as we all figure out how to navigate the new world. And the real question isn't anymore, should we use AI? It's like, what kind of firm and how does this impact the firm that we are building? So, gentlemen, what has surprised you most about AI adoption in law firms?
Hmm. I mean, at the risk of maybe stating the obvious, I think it is the pace at which people have embraced it, right? And I think that we all have slightly different perspectives and we're at slightly different places in our career, but I can say safely that I think I've not seen any technology adopted quite as quickly as this one, not just inside my own firm, but kind of universally, right, across the industry. I think you have a group of practitioners, right, on the legal services side, and then business-minded administrators who historically have tended to be maybe highly skeptical is the right way to say it. Attorneys are known to be highly skeptical, right? But and perhaps that's part of the reason they're so good at using this technology, right? It's because it's really geared toward that type of personality and mindset. Um, but I think the other thing that I think a lot about, and I've been thinking a lot about it recently just because of our own initiatives, is the rate of adoption is actually outpacing the rate of kind of governance, I think, in a lot of ways, right? And so because there's this big push to implement AI in whatever form that means for your individual firm, I think that that's really driven by probably competitive pressure more than anything else, right? And so as firms are really now starting to find their footing, I think we're realizing that the governance needs to be at pace with the implementation, and there's still some work to be done there.
Well, and the pendulum swung so quickly too, from the
Yeah.
no, we're not doing it, our clients don't want us to do it, it's not to why aren't you doing it? Why haven't you adopted faster, bigger, stronger?
Yeah, and it's the first time I've seen something where you have a piece of technology that is so applicable in people's personal lives, right? That they're using it in ways, outside of work that then informs things that they can do at work, right? And they're all incredibly smart and talented and think that they have the best idea in the world, and so they're bringing those things to bear. And for a little while, we were all worried we would have a shadow IT problem, and maybe we do in some ways, right? But again, that's sort of where I think the governance piece picks up.
Yeah, totally. So with the governance, the leadership roles are changing as well. So which executive roles do you think are going to change the most over the next 5 years?
I'll take that one, Stacey. I think every role is going to change. Every executive role is going to change to some degree because of AI. Some more than others, of course. And you asked about which ones are the most. If I think through the main roles, you get the CIO. I mean, we're used to change and adoption, and the speed is unusual with this particular disruptive technology. But it's going to be a part of the CIO's role, so I don't think there's a big change there. The COO, I think there's some workflow and operational models that are going to change for the COO. I think for the CFO, there's economic changes. I mean, the whole pricing is going to really impact every firm. The chief talent officer or chief HR officer, whatever your firm has, I think the workforce skills are going to change. I mean, you're going to have to look at hiring people that have that adaptability to fast changing environments and having some AI experience. And then the chief BD marketing officers, there's a big change there. I mean, you're gonna have to really fight for work. Everybody's competing on the same level because these tools are now available to every firm of every size. So I think every role is going to change. The role that might change the most is the brand new role that I've seen come out, mainly in the AmLaw 100 size firms, the chief AI officer roles. So these are brand new in the last few years. They didn't exist 3 years ago, really. They may have been called something like a chief innovation officer, and maybe they've morphed into that. So that's a changing role. Maybe you've seen them as a chief data officer or chief data science officer. I saw a few of those in some really large law firms not long ago. And those seem to be morphing. But what does it look like in 5 years? That's a really tough one because this is such a fast-paced environment. How much of that role that firms really need extra help in, that they're hiring a chief level AI officer person, will be once again absorbed back into other roles. If you think back to maybe 3 different roles I'm thinking of that law firms created in the last 20 years, the CISO, the Chief Information Security Officer or Chief Security Officer, those had staying power, right? Because there was an ongoing risk. So that one stuck around. Chief KM officers, those have adapted some. You've seen some of those morph into something different, or their responsibilities are different. And to some respects, I've seen some of the KM people become innovation officers at a couple of firms. And then the chief data officer, that one seems to fade the most over the years. It's definitely transformed or been reabsorbed back into the CIO role. So what will happen to the chief AI officer role? It's hard to predict, but I'm going to guess it's going to be the one that'll change the most over the next 5 years.
Do you think it's going to be more like a separation of the chief technology officer from like a chief information or AI officer? I
It's
mean,
very
back in olden days, before we had computers on everybody's desk, there wasn't a CIO or a
right.
CTO, not really. And so, that changed the whole world and we had to change how we approached it. Like, does this, I think AI, I mean, obviously it is technology, but it's not like the same as a laptop or anything like that. Like, do we see a separation there?
I definitely see a couple different functions than a traditional technologist in this area. So it's what I see advertised in these positions that you hear about, or some that you can now meet if you go to conferences and things that are these chief AI officers. They seem to be concentrating on 2 functional areas rather than high tech areas, even though they are steep deeply in the technology, the AI technology in particular. But it's adoption, driving adoption of these, and then 2, use case development. They seem to be really focused on practical use case development, learning from others, and then curating those in a way to share with other people in the firm, other practice groups, other legal teams that might benefit from that same use case that another team developed.
And then the security issues become different,
The
right? So,
governance piece is huge
right.
in that area. And that's where a lot of law firms are saying we need extra help. The CIO is just swamped with everything else going on, or there was a gap in innovation as well. But it does seem like most of these chief AI officer roles are mostly right now in those AmLaw 50 or AmLaw 100 size firms. But even the mid-size or the second 100 AmLaw firms are picking up even director level roles of AI or innovation officers. So I think that's going to continue for a while. I think there's a big wave, right? We're seeing this huge wave of AI being adopted and trying to figure out how it's going to impact everybody's lives at work, how it's going to benefit clients in the firm, and what happens when the wave kind of crests over and now we're in a sustainment mode where AI is integrated into everything. It's just a normal part of operations. what happens to that role? How are they going to change? What does it look like? That's the hard part I'm struggling with, trying to figure out where it's going to be in 5 or 10 years.
Yeah, I think we're all struggling with that. So, but that brings me to my next question, which is what's one assumption about running a law firm, about operations that AI will likely make obsolete? Like the typewriters we used to have everywhere once upon a time.
I'll take a stab at that one, Stacey. And at a high level, I think it's as simple as, well, this is the way we've always done it. That's going right out the window. And the second of which, building upon Skip's comments and Michael's comments, the metaphor that makes sense to me is if you take a look at the Olympic logo, and I'm talking about the 5 rings. Okay, well, you can have as many rings as you want at your firm, but my point is that the days of, oh, this was my job and it's squarely in my lane, that's coming to an end. Data is everywhere. There's a security component, there's an operational component, there's a configuration component, there's a governance component, there's an efficiency component, there's a sales component, there is a training ongoing support component. And we're also running into a cycle now, which I find interesting, is many firms are nearing the end of their wave one of AI adoption and are looking to pivot to what they will consider to be their next. And in some cases, we'll have situations where products and projects, about the time it gets launched, people will already start talking about replacing them because of advancements in the marketplace. So this role doesn't exist. Chief, keep it moving forward position.
I like that.
Well, I mean, because the technology is evolving so quickly, and I mean, firms are investing a tremendous amount of money in what is going to be outdated in a much faster cycle than what we've ever seen before.
Right.
Yeah.
So, how then should we C-suite leaders think differently about talent and organizational design and those technology investments?
A very broad question, Stacey.
Yes. The world is
I
changing.
think, well,
How should we think differently?
As a firm that's right in the thick of this, as everybody else is, I'm sure, one of the challenges we have is making sure everybody understands that AI adoption and AI transformation are not the same things. And I think that's where people are possibly becoming a little bit confused. So when we look at what we're using AI for, initially there was this hesitation, right? For all the reasons that we've already discussed, governance, security. And so once people started feeling more comfortable and everybody in the peer group, at least in their peer sized firms, started using it, they said, well, we need to do it. But what they were doing in many cases, and I've seen it happen firsthand, is they were taking these really bad processes and they were just throwing AI at a bad process. Well, I think that just makes a bad AI driven process. And so what firms that will really succeed when they're thinking differently about how they invest in technology and how that lays out with the way that the organization is designed and the talent that they get to run it, you need to look at it from a different perspective and say, okay, what's the business case that we're trying to do? What's the goal? What are we trying to accomplish? I mean, a lot of people are fearful when it comes to talent that we're trying to push out the more entry level staff in lieu of using AI. Mm-hmm. And I'm from the perspective of, well, no. I think the challenge that we have with AI, actually, when it comes to talent acquisition, is how many of these individuals that are applying now do I have to go through who used AI to write their resumes and cover letters, and they're just, kind of skirting their way through the process, right? So it changes our perspective from that, but also to Jim's perspective about the rings. Everything that AI now does touches so many different areas, and I'm seeing it at a much smaller scale, which I think is actually scarier. The siloing of what we used to do, it doesn't exist anymore. And those walls have been breaking down for a while, but the idea of organizational charts, those are becoming less important. We're seeing handoffs happen more frequently. We're seeing those development cycles happen quicker because so many people need to be involved for the success of what we're trying to do. And when it comes specifically to the investments we're making in technology as it relates to AI, I think at some level we need to just make sure that we're not just throwing money at something. We talked about this in a previous episode where companies were just tossing cash at credits and then realizing that they weren't getting their money out of it. As long as you're trying to solve an actual problem that has a business use case, is it solving, is it doing something that can actually give you something on the other side that benefits you as a firm? Is it helping clients? Is it making you more efficient? Then I think there's a purpose to it. But once you can identify exactly why you're trying to do it, then I think that's going to change the technology investment. But what we have seen with AI is it has pushed more to the cloud. If people haven't adopted that already, they're moving in that direction. So, it's a very broad question, so it's hard to give a specific answer. But for me, at least in my experience, you really got to identify why you're doing what you're doing so you can truly not just adopt, but you can use AI to transform your firm.
Return on investment. It's all about return on investment.
ROI will always be the
Just
most critical
saying.
thing. Yep.
So looking ahead to 2030, so not 5 years, 3 years at this point, what will distinguish the firms that thrive as opposed to those that struggle?
I'll take a stab at that. So when we talk about the word innovation, a lot of folks sometimes will think, oh, you got to come up with the next big thing. I think what's going to differentiate the firms of 2020 from the also rans are the folks that can develop a culture of innovation towards some common goals, such as we want to be innovative on this. We want this to be efficient. We want to solve this client problem. We want to be excellent at these type of things. And I think it's less of here's the massive idea that nobody's come up with, because one, that's really hard to do. And two, it's really hard to keep it a secret. And it's instead building off of what Adam just talked about. If you have a process, maybe you didn't know that the process wasn't all that great, but AI is suddenly illuminating, here's all the things you don't have to do to get that work done. And you streamline and you innovate along those lines from the perspective of let's just make it easier for people to work. I think the law firms that make it easy for attorneys to do excellent work with as little friction as possible will stand head and shoulders above those that don't.
So one of the things that I have observed in my career about law firms is that there's very low tolerance for failure because we're just risk averse as organizations, as an industry. So do you think that AI is going to make us less tolerant for failure or raise our expectations for what we expect that return on investment to be? Or do we get to start doing the fail fast? And move on, which is not something we've got a lot of experience in as an industry.
Well, I can speak just for myself. I think one of the differentiations that's happened in the law firm space in the past 5-ish years is we have added individuals in C-suite roles that are not traditional attorneys, right? So I take, for instance, myself in a COO role and a CIO role. In my COO role, I'm considered sort of the right hand of the managing partner, yet I'm not an attorney. And so I have a different perspective on things that they may not have. And so I'm less risk averse by my very nature. And so it's my job to say to somebody else that may be more risk averse, it is our job to give somebody permission to experiment a little with this under the right guidance. And right, we have things that we have to do legally and ethically, but within that guidance, how can we fail appropriately? How can we do things and try things that maybe we weren't willing to before because we can do it quicker and faster and we can find out the results a lot sooner. So that's how I look at that.
So historically, and I've gone off script a little bit here, but so historically, the larger law firms have absolutely had the benefit here where they had more resources to throw at it, they had more opportunities to develop products. But I think one of the things that we're seeing in the technology is that it's leveling that playing field a great deal with AI. So the smaller firms are able to do the kind of initiatives that were out of their reach in the past.
Absolutely.
Do you think that's going to change the demographics on how the law firms evolve? I mean, are we going to see more smaller firms, or are the eggs going to be mostly in the large firm basket?
I was thinking of Thomson Reuters study that they published last fall, which said they predicted by 2030, and I may be paraphrasing here, by 2030, 25% of the law firms in America today will not exist. But they also said legal demand will be up.
Yeah, I think we'll have more lawyers, just a lot more law firms and fewer of the firms that are on the. We're going to see a
So
lot of evolution. I mean, we've been talking about this for literally decades, the thinning of the middle, right? The big get bigger, and then there's just
Yeah.
a proliferation of smaller firms.
Well, AI, you won't have robot lawyers in 2030. Probably not even in 2035. I'm going out on a limb saying that. But what I can tell you is, with AI won't replace the lawyers in 2030. The AI enabled lawyer will replace the non AI leveraging lawyer.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't even think that's 2030. I think that's
Now.
sooner. Yeah. And I think the firms that embrace those changing roles, right, are also the ones that will succeed. So I think when you think about maybe like a very traditional model where you had some number of partners, and at a ratio of 2 or 3x, you had associates that were ultimately sort of driving significant profit engine for these large firms, right? I think that those ratios are going to shift dramatically. I think the role of partners are going to become very much more technology enabled working partners, and then it will ultimately change the way that firms probably structure their associate ranks. And I think that the firms that embrace that ultimately will also be on the path to success.
Yeah, the firms that I see as really successful in 2030 are those that learn to master AI in the capacity that it's really about providing the client with the outcome they wanted. So with AI, can you get that outcome better, a better quality outcome, faster than they were used to doing the way we used to do legal work manually without AI, or cheaper? Does it cost them less to get to the outcome they desired? Maybe it's not a one for one, like people are talking about the death of the below hour again, and that's a whole big thing. It took you 5 hours manually, it takes you 1 hour with AI. Do you charge for 1 hour, or do you charge for the value of the work product out? Those are questions that law firms that figured that out on how to price with their clients for the better, the faster, and the cheaper are going to be the ones that thrive the best.
Well,
Yeah.
you know the old triangle. You get one, you get two of the three. That's it. So,
Good, fast and cheap. Yeah.
yep, you get two out of the three.
Yeah.
I think there's an opportunity here in the marketplace, and we'll see this play out. So it's an interesting statement to say that 25% of the firms will go away. That doesn't mean that they disappeared. That just means that they're not standalone entities.
Right.
So in my career over the last 25 years, there's been lots of firms that have merged. Firms have gotten bigger, and so on and so on. And using the metaphor of an accordion, a couple firms merge. All of a sudden, you have lots of names in the namespace. A couple of years later, it squishes back down to whatever they think is acceptable. I could see smaller size firms developing pockets of excellence in particular things. Suddenly their value goes through the roof, and other firms would love for them to join their team. So when they have expertise in that practice, or they have the ability to take that expertise and scale it across a variety of practices. I can see that happen.
I mean, I think what we've learned from AI thus far is that having that expertise and knowing when the AI has gone astray is what's really valuable. And so that's the same thing that our lawyers have been doing all this time, is guiding the work. So I think that will always be valuable. Now how we price it to our clients is going to be a whole different conversation and evolution, and that's a podcast all by itself talking about pricing.
It sure is. I think for the first time, clients don't want the billable hour to die. So,
Yes, because if it's 1 hour instead of five, well, unless we
yeah.
keep raising our rates 20% every year,
Well,
then
yeah, there's that, I suppose. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see what the right balance between AFA and keeping the billable hour in the mix winds up being.
yeah, definitely. Any final thoughts, gentlemen, before we wrap up this last episode before ILTACon?
I have a couple of random thoughts, on the future of pricing and, capturing margin and value and such. I don't think the billable hour is going away, but suddenly I think fixed fee arrangements are going to become far more of interest to both sides of the equation. You get price certainty from a client perspective. You get built-in margin from an attorney perspective, or I should say from a law firm perspective. And the more efficient a law firm can make a specific type of work over the course of time, they have the ability to improve upon that equation. I think there's a lot of motivators there. Stacey, you said it up front, and I agree with you completely. I'm of the opinion we're going to need more legal assistance. The legal assistance is just going to be really different than what it was 5 years ago and what it'll be 5 years from now. Just wait till
My
all the
theory,
lawsuits start coming in.
yeah. My theory about the billable hour is that it'll be like candles. Like it used to be critical, but eventually it will only be used for emergencies and special occasions.
Yeah, that's a good metaphor.
And taking that a step further, so at my firm, we don't do the billable hour. Everything is flat rate because of the type of law that we practice. Except now we're seeing the slow creep of the billable hour because of these unique things that we can't plan for. And so now we're going the opposite direction. How do we account for the billable hour back into the practice? So, you do take the good with the bad there. So it goes both ways.
Okay.
Here's
Well, thank
here's
you.
one
Sorry,
other, just one other comment for
knock it out. Take us
yeah,
home.
throw it out there. So there was a point in time, and I'm going to use cars as an example, where people had to know how cars worked, or you had an advantage if you had an idea of how your car worked in terms of, do I maintain it myself as compared to, I'm going to call it the neighborhood mechanic and such. And there's certainly exceptions to all of this. Cars have become reliable enough now that the vast majority of people don't know how they work, and they're fine with it. They just want to get from here to there. As a matter of fact, they're fine enough with it to get into somebody else's car and let them deal with the driving and such. It used to be the idea of, I'm going to get into a stranger's car was a bad idea. Now we pay for that privilege. So I share all of this from the perspective that not only is AI changing fast enough, I wonder if we're going to get to a point where it starts to matter less how the AI works, and what matters more is what could people just do with it.
Very true.
Good point.
I'm stuck somewhere on the Waymo evolution of your driver analogy, getting to the driverless car, and I'm not sure I'm comfortable with that, but we can leave it there for today.
Not all successes are successful, Michael. Some are better.
Fair. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and thank you to our listeners for joining us for So You Want to Join the C-Suite, where we go behind the title and inside the realities of law firm leadership. Our next episode is live at ILTACon, so come check us out in real life. See you in a couple weeks.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.